The room went dead silent when the mechanic in work boots quietly said those 5 words. You're building on condemned
Great to
ground.
see you all.
Every
You
seat
too.
at the
Cheers.
corner table
Another round
froze
coming up.
mid-laugh. Derek Brennan, the
So I told him you
developer
won't
who'd
believe
been
what happened
knocking him
next.
30 seconds
Oh, I
earlier
have to
went
hear
pale.
this.
He actually
The
did
woman
it.
in
Can
the
you believe
charcoal
that?
blazer pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen, and the color drained from her face as she pulled up public records. In that instant, everyone in Ember and Oak Bar realized the quiet man they'd dismissed had just saved them from a multi-million-dollar disaster and possibly saved lives. But 12 hours earlier, nobody in that bar knew Marcus Wade's name. They just saw grease under his fingernails and assumed he was nobody worth noticing. The rain came down in sheets that Thursday evening, turning Portland's streets into rivers of reflected neon. Marcus had pulled his truck into a spot 3 blocks from the bar, killed the engine, and sat there listening to the downpour hammer his roof. His hands still smelled like diesel and degreaser despite the scrubbing he'd given them in the shop bathroom. There was a stubborn line of black under his thumbnail that wouldn't come out no matter how hard he'd tried. His phone lit up with a text from Helen Wright, the neighbor who'd watched Emma since she was 3. Emma's asleep. Take your time tonight. You deserve a break. Marcus smiled at that. Helen had been there through everything, the divorce, the late nights, the scramble to make ends meet. She'd seen him at his lowest and never once made him feel small for it. That was 5 years ago now. 5 years of being both parents, both safety nets, both the steady hand and the soft voice at bedtime. But tonight wasn't about dwelling on what was missing. His friend Jake had been insisting for weeks that he needed to get out to do something that wasn't work or parenting or the bone-deep exhaustion that followed both. 1 beer. That's all Jake had asked for. 1 beer sounded reasonable. Marcus stepped out into the rain and walked the 3 blocks to Ember and Oak. The bar sat on a corner lot in Portland's Pearl District, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling. The kind of place that served $14 cocktails with hand-carved ice and appetizers that came on wooden boards. He'd been here exactly 3 times in his life, twice for client dinners back when he worked at Morrison and Webb Architecture, and once the night he realized his marriage was ending and needed somewhere anonymous to sit with his thoughts. He pushed through the heavy wooden door and was immediately hit with warmth, the smell of fried food, and the layered hum of conversation. The bar ran along the left wall, all polished copper and gleaming bottles. Tables filled the center space. A few booths lined the right side, and that's where his attention snagged. 5 men in expensive suits occupied the corner booth. Sharp haircuts, confident postures, the kind of guys who looked like they closed deals before lunch and played golf after. Their laughter carried across the room, loud and performative. One of them, mid-30s, square-jawed with the kind of tan that came from somewhere tropical and recent, was holding court, gesturing with a rocks glass in one hand. Marcus didn't recognize them, didn't care to. He made his way to the bar and slid onto a stool near the end, away from the noise. The bartender, a woman with sleeve tattoos and a nose ring, gave him a quick nod. "What can I get you?" "Whatever's on tap. Something local." "You got it." She poured him a pint of amber ale and slid it across the bar. Marcus wrapped both hands around the cold glass and took a long drink. It tasted like pine and citrus, crisp and clean. He let his shoulders drop for the first time all day. Behind him, the laughter from the corner booth spiked again. "I'm telling you, this city's ripe for development. You just have to know where to look. Most people don't see potential. They see problems. That's because most people are broke." Another voice chimed in, younger and sharper. More laughter followed. Marcus kept his eyes on his beer. The bartender returned, wiping down the counter. "Rough day." "Long one. Transmission rebuild took longer than I thought." "You a mechanic?" He nodded. "Over on MLK. Small shop." "Honest work?" She moved down the bar to help another customer. "Honest work." Marcus turned the phrase over in his mind. It was honest, sure. It paid the bills, kept Emma in a good school district, put food on the table. But some nights when he was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, he thought about the blueprints he used to draft the buildings he'd helped design, the way a city could grow smart or grow stupid depending on who was making decisions. He'd walked away from all that. Had to. Architecture didn't offer the kind of stability a single father needed. No health insurance, no guaranteed paycheck, just long hours demanding clients and the constant hustle for the next project. So he'd gone back to what his father taught him, fixing engines. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. "Excuse me." Marcus glanced up. One of the suits from the corner booth stood a few feet away, grinning like he'd just won a bet. Mid-20s, maybe slicked-back hair and a tie that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly truck payment. "Yeah. My buddies over there were wondering you just get off work." Marcus looked down at himself. Worn Carhartt jacket, flannel shirt with a small oil stain near the pocket jeans that had seen better days, work boots with scuffed steel toes. "Yeah, I did." "What do you do, mechanic?" The guy's grin widened. "That's awesome, man. Respect. Blue-collar work, you know, real salt-of-the-earth stuff." The condescension dripped from every word. Marcus took another sip of his beer and said nothing. "We're in commercial real estate. Development acquisitions, that kind of thing. Big projects, high stakes." He leaned in conspiratorially. "Probably a different world from transmissions, right?" A few chuckles floated over from the booth. Marcus met the guy's eyes. "Probably." Right. The suit straightened up, still smiling. "Well, hey, keep up the good work, man. Somebody's got to keep our cars running." He turned and walked back to his table, where he was greeted with fist bumps and more laughter. Marcus set his glass down carefully and stared at the amber liquid inside. His jaw was tight, but his pulse was steady. He'd been underestimated before dismissed, treated like furniture. It wasn't new. The bartender reappeared. "You okay?" "Fine." "Those guys are jackasses." "Yeah." She refilled his glass without asking and moved on. Marcus sat there for another 20 minutes, nursing his beer, letting the noise of the bar wash over him. The suits kept talking, kept laughing. At one point, the square-jawed one, Graham someone called him, launched into a story about outbidding another firm on a development deal, his voice swelling with self-satisfaction. Marcus listened without meaning to. And they didn't even see it coming. "We swooped in, offered 15% over asking, closed in 3 weeks. They're still crying about it." "What's the project?" "Old industrial zone, Hearthlight District. We're turning it into mixed-use condos, retail, maybe a boutique hotel. It's going to print money." Marcus's hand tightened around his glass. Hearthlight District. He knew that area. Knew it well. 6 years ago, back when he was still at Morrison & Webb, they'd been approached about a potential project there. He'd done the preliminary research himself, soil surveys, floodplain maps, zoning histories. The site had problems, big ones. But he said nothing. Just finished his beer, left cash on the bar, and walked out into the rain. The house on Willow Creek Road was small but solid, a 2-bedroom craftsman with a covered porch and a maple tree in the front yard that turned gold every October. Marcus had bought it the same month the divorce was finalized, using every dollar he'd saved and a loan his father co-signed. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. He let himself in quietly, hung his jacket on the hook by the door, and slipped off his boots. The living room was dim, lit only by the glow of the nightlight in the hallway. Helen had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Emma ate all her dinner, finished homework. No TV past 8. She's an angel." Marcus smiled and folded the note carefully. He walked down the hallway and eased open Emma's bedroom door. She was buried under her quilt, one arm flung over her stuffed rabbit, her dark hair spread across the pillow. She looked so much like her mother it sometimes hurt to look at her same nose, same stubborn chin. Marcus stepped inside and knelt beside the bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Love you, kiddo," he whispered. She stirred slightly but didn't wake. He stayed there for a moment, just watching her breathe, feeling the weight of the day settle into his bones. This was why he did it, why he worked 60-hour weeks, why he swallowed his pride at bars and let people assume he was less than he was, because she deserved a foundation that wouldn't crack. The next evening, Marcus found himself back at Ember and Oak. He hadn't planned on it. Jake had bailed something about his girlfriend's birthday, and Marcus had driven home intending to heat up leftovers and help Emma with her science project. But Helen had insisted she could stay another hour, and Emma had been so focused on building her volcano that she'd barely noticed when he said he was stepping out. So here he was again. Same stool, same bartender. Back already? She slid him a beer without asking. Guess so. Glutton for punishment. Marcus almost smiled. The bar was quieter tonight. No suits in the corner booth, just a few scattered tables, a couple at the far end, and a woman sitting 3 stools down from Marcus nursing a glass of red wine and reading something on her tablet. She was striking in a way that didn't demand attention but earned it anyway. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail, wearing a charcoal blazer over a white blouse. No jewelry except a slim watch. She had the kind of posture that suggested she was used to rooms going quiet when she spoke. Marcus glanced at her once, then back at his beer. Rough week. He looked up. She was watching him, one eyebrow slightly raised, her expression unreadable. Long one. I know the feeling. She took a sip of wine. You were here last night. I saw what happened with those idiots in the suits. Marcus shrugged. Not worth thinking about. Maybe. She tilted her head slightly. But you handled it well. Most people would have snapped back. What's the point? She studied him for a moment, then turned back to her tablet. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while. Marcus finished half his beer. The woman made notes on her screen, occasionally frowning at whatever she was reading. Finally she spoke again. You really a mechanic? Yeah. You like it? Marcus considered that. It's steady. That's not the same as liking it. No, he admitted. It's not. She closed her tablet and shifted slightly toward him. What would you rather be doing? No one had asked him that in years. I used to work in architecture, urban planning mostly, designing spaces that actually worked for people, not just developers. What happened? Life. Got married, had a kid, needed something more stable. The woman nodded, not with pity, but with understanding. I get that. Stability's underrated. What do you do? Marcus asked. Real estate development. He almost laughed. Of course. She caught the look on his face and smiled faintly. I know. After last night you probably think we're all... I think some of you are. Fair? She extended a hand. Claire Ashford. Marcus shook it. Her grip was firm, professional. Marcus weighed. Nice to meet you, Marcus. She signaled the bartender for another glass of wine. For what it's worth, those guys last night, not my people. I was here meeting a contractor. They just happened to be loud. You know them. Claire hesitated. One of them, Derek Brennan. He's my business partner. Marcus raised an eyebrow. It's complicated. We run a development firm together. Well, my father founded it. Derek handles acquisitions. I handle operations and design. We don't always see eye to eye. Seems like an understatement. She laughed, short, dry, but genuine. You have no idea. They talked for another hour. Easy conversation. No performance. Claire asked about Emma, and Marcus found himself telling her about his daughter's obsession with volcanoes and her absolute refusal to eat anything green. Claire talked about growing up in Boston, studying economics at Yale, spending 12 years clawing her way up in a male-dominated industry. Why stay with someone like Derek? Marcus asked eventually. Claire swirled her wine. Because he's good at what he does. Ruthless but effective. And because walking away would mean starting over. She paused. Sometimes you stay in partnerships that aren't perfect, because the alternative is worse. Marcus understood that more than she knew. When he finally glanced at his phone, it was almost 9. I should go. My neighbor's watching my daughter. Of course. Claire stood as well, gathering her things. This was nice. Unexpected, but nice. Yeah, Marcus said. It was. She handed him a business card. If you ever want to talk more about urban planning seriously, give me a call. I'm always looking for people who actually understand how cities work. Marcus pocketed the card, not sure if he'd ever use it, but appreciating the gesture nonetheless. As he walked out into the cool night air, he realized he felt lighter than he had in months. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus found himself at Ember and Oak 3 more times. It became a routine he hadn't planned but didn't resist. Claire was often there, sometimes working, sometimes just decompressing. They'd sit at the bar talking about everything from zoning laws to Emma's science fair project, to Claire's frustrations with Derek's increasingly aggressive acquisition strategies. He's chasing deals too fast, cutting corners. It's going to bite us. Like what? She hesitated, then lowered her voice. We just closed on the Hearthlight District project. Derek pushed it through in record time. I haven't even seen the full environmental reports yet. Marcus's stomach tightened. You should. I know, I will. She rubbed her temples. But Derek's already talking to investors. He wants to break ground in 6 weeks. That's fast. Too fast. Marcus wanted to say more, wanted to tell her what he knew about that site. But it wasn't his place. He wasn't part of that world anymore. Still, the unease lingered. It was a Friday night when everything changed. Marcus walked into Ember and Oak and immediately felt the energy shift. The corner booth was packed again, Derek and his crew plus a few new faces. Champagne bottles cluttered the table. Someone had strung a cheap banner across the back wall, Hearthlight, building the future. Claire sat at the bar, her back to the celebration, staring into a glass of wine like it held answers. Marcus slid onto the stool beside her. You okay? She glanced at him, and he saw the exhaustion in her eyes. Derek just announced the project to the investors. Full PR rollout, groundbreaking ceremony scheduled for next month. You still haven't seen the reports. He says they're fine, that I'm overthinking it. She took a long drink. Maybe I am. Before Marcus could respond, Derek's voice boomed across the bar. Claire! Come on, we're celebrating. Stop sulking and get over here. She closed her eyes briefly, then stood. I should make an appearance. Marcus watched her walk toward the booth, watched Derek pull her into a one-armed hug while someone shoved a champagne flute into her hand. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Marcus turned back to his beer. 10 minutes later, Derek's voice cut through the noise again, this time directed at him. Hey, mechanic guy. Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't turn around. Yeah, you... Derek was standing now, champagne in hand, grin wide and loose. The bar went quiet. Marcus slowly swiveled on his stool. Derek gestured him over. Come here for a second, don't be shy. We're celebrating biggest development deal in Portland this year. Claire's face was pale. Marcus stood and walked toward the booth, every eye in the bar following him. Derek slung an arm around his shoulders like they were old friends. This guy is a mechanic. Real salt-of-the-earth type. I love it. Blue-collar backbone of America, am I right? A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the booth. So, tell me. Derek's breath was heavy with expensive booze. What do you think of all this? He waved his glass toward the banner. Big development, luxury condos, retail spaces. We're going to transform that whole neighborhood. Marcus looked at the banner, at the champagne, at Claire, who wouldn't meet his eyes. Then he looked at Derek. Which project are we cheering for? Marcus asked quietly. Derek blinked. What? You said biggest deal in Portland this year. Which project? Hearthlight District, man. Keep up. Derek laughed. We just closed on it. Going to be huge. Marcus nodded slowly. We're in the Hearthlight District, east side, near the river. Why? And that's when Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not anger, not pride, just a deep, settled certainty that silence was no longer an option. Because you're building on condemned ground. The room went dead silent. Derek's smile faltered. What? The east side of Hearthlight sits on a former industrial zone. The soil's contaminated heavy metals, petroleum byproducts. The water table's less than 6 feet down and the whole area's in a floodplain. The city flagged it for environmental mitigation 3 years ago. Derek's face flushed. We had it surveyed. Did you read the survey? Or just the summary your acquisition team gave you? Claire pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. The blood drained from her face. He's right, she whispered. The city records. There's a mitigation order dated 18 months ago. Derek stared at her. That's impossible. We wouldn't have. You rushed it. You cut corners. You didn't do the full environmental review. I saved us time. You built a foundation on lies, Marcus said quietly. The silence stretched out thick and suffocating. Derek turned to Marcus, his face twisted with humiliation and rage. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a mechanic. Yeah, Marcus said. I am. And I know that if you pour a foundation on unstable ground, it doesn't matter how nice the building looks. Eventually it cracks. Someone's phone buzzed, then another. Word was already spreading. Derek stood there, chest heaving, champagne glass trembling in his hand. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the bar. The booth emptied quickly after that, investors muttering into phones, assistants gathering coats. Claire stood frozen, staring at her screen. Marcus walked back to the bar, picked up his beer, and took a long drink. The bartender looked at him with something like awe. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. Marcus didn't feel badass. He felt tired. Claire appeared beside him a moment later. Her hands were shaking. You just saved my company, and maybe saved lives. I just told the truth. Most people wouldn't have. Marcus met her eyes. Most people don't read city planning reports at midnight because they can't sleep. She almost smiled. Then she sat down beside him, and for a long time, neither of them said anything. Outside, the rain started again, soft and steady, washing the streets clean. The rain had stopped by the time Marcus pulled into his driveway that night, but the street still gleamed under the streetlights, slick and reflective. He sat in his truck for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the dark windows of his house. Helen had left the porch light on, a small kindness he noticed every time. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Thank you. I mean it. He didn't reply, didn't know what to say. He'd only told the truth, something that shouldn't require gratitude but somehow did in a world where convenience often trumped accuracy. Inside the house was quiet. Helen had left her usual note on the kitchen counter this time, with a smiley face drawn at the bottom. Marcus smiled despite himself, folded the note, and added it to the small stack he kept in the drawer. He checked on Emma, asleep as always, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight, then retreated to the kitchen. He made himself a sandwich he didn't really want and sat at the table staring at nothing. His mind kept replaying the moment, Derek's face draining of color, Claire's hand shaking as she scrolled through city records, the way the entire booth had emptied like someone had pulled a fire alarm. He'd humiliated a powerful man in front of his investors. That wasn't something people forgot or forgave. Marcus took a bite of his sandwich, chewed mechanically, and wondered if he'd just made his quiet life significantly more complicated. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight and the smell of pancakes. Emma sat at the kitchen table in her pajamas, swinging her legs and chattering about the science fair. And Mrs. Patterson said my volcano was the best in the class, but I think she says that to everyone. But mine actually worked, Dad. Like really worked. Tommy's just kind of fizzled. That's because you followed the measurements. Science is all about precision. Like building stuff. Exactly like building stuff. Emma drowned her pancakes in syrup, took a huge bite, and grinned at him with chipmunk cheeks. Marcus felt the tightness in his chest ease slightly. This was real. This mattered. Whatever happened at Ember and Oak was just noise. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Marcus Wade. Yeah. This is Rachel Nguyen. I'm a reporter with the Portland Tribune. I'm covering the Hearthlight District development story, and I understand you were involved in revealing some significant environmental concerns last night. Marcus's stomach sank. How did you get my number? I have sources. Look, I just want to ask you a few questions about... I'm not interested. Mr. Wade, the public has a right to know about... He hung up. Emma was watching him, syrup dripping from her fork. Who was that? Nobody important. Finish your breakfast. The phone rang again. Different number. He let it go to voicemail. Then again. And again. By noon he'd received 7 calls from various reporters. 3 emails and a text from Jake at the shop. "Dude, what did you do last night? You're trending on Twitter." Marcus didn't have Twitter. Didn't want Twitter. He silenced his phone and took Emma to the park where they spent 2 hours on the swings and the jungle gym, her laughter cutting through the autumn air like something clean and uncomplicated. When they got home, there was a car parked across the street, a silver sedan with tinted windows. Marcus's jaw tightened. He ushered Emma inside, quickly locked the door, and peered through the front window. The sedan didn't move. His phone buzzed. "Claire. We need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere private?" Marcus hesitated, then typed back, "When?" "Tonight. 7. I'll send you an address." Word count 4,247 words so far, continuing to reach minimum 6,800. Black Bean Coffee was a small place tucked into a quiet neighborhood east of the river. Marcus chose a table in the back corner where he could see the entrance. Claire walked in at exactly 7, wearing jeans and a navy sweater, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. She looked tired, worn. She spotted him, ordered something at the counter, then joined him at the table. "Thanks for coming." "What's going on?" Claire wrapped both hands around her cup even though it was too hot to drink. "The board called an emergency meeting this morning. Derek's been suspended pending a full review of the Hearthlight acquisition." That was fast. It had to be. "The investors are furious. The city's threatening to pull permits. Our lawyers are scrambling." She looked up at him. "You were right about everything. The contamination, the flood zone, the mitigation order Derek ignored. If we'd broken ground, it would have been a catastrophe." "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly. "Don't be. You saved us." She took a careful sip of her coffee. "But now there's a problem." Of course there was. "Derek's lawyers are floating the idea that you had some kind of vendetta, that you sabotaged the deal because of what happened the first night at the bar." Marcus stared at her. "That's insane." "I know. But they're scrambling and you're an easy target, a mechanic who used to work in architecture. It sounds like someone with an axe to grind." "I don't even know Derek. I didn't know about the project until he announced it." "I believe you." Claire set her cup down. "But belief and proof are different things. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you know about the Hearthlight issues before that night?" "I knew the site had problems. 6-7 years ago, when I worked at Morrison and Webb, we looked at it for a potential client. The research I did back then stuck with me. But I didn't know Derek bought it until he said so." Claire nodded slowly. "Okay. That's what I thought." She pulled out her phone and showed him a screen. "This is a public records request I filed this morning. It shows the entire environmental history of the Hearthlight site, every flag, every report, every warning the city issued. It's all public information. Anyone could have found it." "But Derek didn't." "No, he relied on his acquisition team and they cut corners." She put her phone away. "I'm going to make sure the board understands that you didn't sabotage anything. You just did what Derek should have done in the first place, your homework." "Will they listen?" "They will if I have anything to say about it." Claire's expression hardened. "This is my company too. I've spent 12 years building it. I'm not going to let Derek destroy it because he was too arrogant to read a report." Marcus believed her. There was steel in her voice, the kind that came from fighting battles most people never saw. "There's something else," Claire said. "The press is all over this. Your name's out there. People are calling you a whistleblower, a hero, all kinds of things." "I'm not a hero, I just answered a question." "That's not how the world works, Marcus. You embarrassed powerful people. That makes you either a hero or a target depending on who's telling the story." "I don't want to be either. I just want to go to work, pick up my daughter from school, and live my life." Claire studied him for a long moment. "I get that. I do. But I don't think that's an option anymore." Monday morning, the Portland Tribune ran the story above the fold, "Former architect turned mechanic exposes major flaws in multi-million-dollar development deal." The article was fair. It quoted Claire extensively, included statements from city planners, and painted Derek as reckless rather than malicious. But it also included Marcus's work history, his background in architecture, and a quote from an anonymous source calling him someone who clearly understands the technical side of urban development better than most professionals. At Torres Auto Repair, customers started recognizing him. Some wanted to shake his hand. Others just stared. One guy asked for a selfie, which Marcus politely declined. Frank Torres, his boss, cornered him during lunch. Frank was in his 60s, a Vietnam vet with grease permanently embedded in the lines of his hands. "You're handling this well. Most people would let it go to their heads." "I'm not most people." "No kidding." Frank bit into his sandwich. "You planning to go back to architecture?" "No." "Why not? You're good at it. People are noticing." "Because this is stable. Architecture isn't. I can't risk that with Emma depending on me." Frank nodded, chewing thoughtfully. "Fair enough. But don't stay in a box just because it's familiar, kid. Sometimes the stable thing is the riskiest choice of all." Marcus thought about that for the rest of the day. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He'd been avoiding this, but curiosity finally won. He pulled up the city's public records portal and typed in Hearthlight District. Page after page of documents appeared: environmental assessments, soil contamination reports, flood zone designations, mitigation orders. Everything he'd mentioned at the bar laid out in bureaucratic detail. It was all there, public, accessible to anyone with an internet connection and the patience to look. Derek hadn't just cut corners. He'd ignored an entire roadmap of warnings. Marcus kept scrolling. He found the original survey Morrison and Webb had commissioned years ago, the one he'd worked on. His name was buried in the credits, Junior Researcher, Soil Analysis. He'd been 26, then fresh out of grad school, excited about every project, no matter how small. That version of himself felt like a stranger now. His phone buzzed. "Claire again. Board meeting tomorrow. They want to talk to you." Marcus stared at the message. "Why?" "They have questions, and I think they have an offer." "I'm not interested in offers. Just hear them out. Please, you owe me that much." He did owe her. She'd vouched for him when she didn't have to. "What time?" 10 a.m. I'll send you the address." The offices of Ashford and Brennan Development occupied the top floor of a glass tower downtown, all polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Marcus felt distinctly out of place in his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt he'd ironed twice. Claire met him in the lobby wearing a charcoal suit and the same unreadable expression she'd had the first night they met. "Nervous? Should I be?" "Probably." She led him toward the elevators. "But don't let them intimidate you. Half of them don't know the difference between a load-bearing wall and drywall." The elevator rose smoothly, silently. Marcus watched the city shrink below them. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Claire glanced at him. "Doing what?" "Putting yourself on the line for me. You don't know me." "I know enough. And I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Something Derek forgot a long time ago." The elevator doors opened. The conference room was massive, dominated by a long table surrounded by leather chairs. 6 people sat waiting, 4 men, 2 women, all expensive suits and watchful eyes. Claire made introductions. Names. Marcus immediately forgot, except for one, Robert Ashford, Claire's father and the company's founder. He was in his 70s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who'd built empires and wasn't shy about it. "Mr. Wade, thank you for coming." Robert gestured to a chair. Marcus sat. Claire took the seat beside him. "We've been reviewing the Hearthlight situation, and while it's been embarrassing for the company, we recognize that your intervention prevented a much larger disaster." "I wasn't trying to intervene. I was just answering a question." "With information that saved us millions of dollars in lawsuits and potential loss of life," one of the women added. "That's not nothing." "We've also reviewed your background," Robert said. "Morrison and Webb speaks highly of you. They said you left to pursue more stable work. Admirable given your circumstances." Marcus's jaw tightened. "What's your point?" Robert smiled slightly. "Direct. I like that." He leaned forward. Mr. Wade, we'd like to offer you a consulting position, part-time flexible hours. Your job would be to review our projects before acquisition, environmental assessments, zoning compliance, structural feasibility. Essentially, you'd do what you did with Hearthlight, but before we waste money on bad deals. Marcus stared at him. You want me to be a fact-checker? We want you to be the person who keeps us honest, Claire said quietly. Someone who understands the technical side and isn't afraid to speak up when something's wrong. I have a job, a daughter. I can't. Part-time, Robert repeated. 20 hours a week max. You set your own schedule. We pay competitive consulting rates. One of the men slid a folder across the table. Marcus opened it. The number at the bottom made his stomach flip. This is too much. It's what you're worth, Claire said. And it's what we should have been paying someone to do all along. Marcus closed the folder. I need to think about it. Of course. Take a week. But Mr. Wade, I'll be blunt, you have a gift for this work. It would be a waste to spend the rest of your life rebuilding transmissions when you could be rebuilding how this city grows. Marcus didn't go back to the shop that afternoon. He drove aimlessly for an hour, windows down, radio off, just the sound of wind and his own thoughts. Everything Frank had said echoed in his head. Don't stay in a box just because it's familiar. Everything his ex-wife had said the night she left, you're wasting your potential. Marcus, you're too scared to take risks. Everything he'd told himself for 7 years, stability matters. Emma matters, nothing else does. But what if stability wasn't just about paychecks? What if it was also about building something that lasted? He ended up at the park where he'd taken Emma the day before. Sat on a bench, watched kids climb and fall and get back up. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Derek. We need to talk. Marcus's pulse quickened. He didn't respond. Another text came through. I know you think I'm the bad guy here. Maybe I am. But you don't know the whole story. Marcus typed back, I don't need to. You embarrassed me in front of my investors. You cost me my reputation. You think that doesn't have consequences? You did that to yourself. I just pointed it out. The phone rang. Derek calling. Marcus answered. What do you want? To apologize for how I treated you at the bar. I was out of line. Marcus said nothing. I'm not a bad person. I made mistakes, cut corners I shouldn't have. But I'm not the villain everyone's making me out to be. Then why are you calling me? Derek was quiet for a moment. Because you're getting offered something I built, and I want you to know what you're walking into. I haven't accepted anything. But you're thinking about it. Derek's laugh was bitter. Claire's good at convincing people. She makes everything sound noble, righteous. But that company was mine before it was hers. I built it from nothing. And now they're pushing me out because I made one bad call. It wasn't one bad call. You ignored warnings. You rushed a deal. You put people at risk. And you were the white knight who saved everyone. Must feel good being the hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who reads the fine print. Then read this. Derek's voice hardened. Claire's father wants you because you're useful. The second you stop being useful, they'll drop you just like they're dropping me. Don't fool yourself into thinking you matter to them. The line went dead. Marcus sat there, phone in hand, staring at the playground. He didn't know if Derek was right, didn't know if it mattered, but he knew one thing: he wasn't making this decision out of fear. Not anymore. That night, after tucking Emma in, Marcus sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. Old school, the way his father had taught him to think through big decisions. He drew a line down the middle of the page. On the left, reasons to stay at the shop. Stability routine, no risk. Emma's schedule stays the same. On the right, reasons to take the consulting job. Better pay, meaningful work using skills he'd spent years developing. He stared at the two columns for a long time. Then he added one more line to the right side. Teaching Emma that scared isn't the same as smart. His phone buzzed. Claire. No pressure, but the offer stands. Whatever you decide, I respect it. Marcus looked at the notebook, at the two columns, at the life he'd built from caution and the life he'd once imagined. He picked up his phone and typed, I'll do it. Part-time. And I keep my job at the shop until I'm sure this works. Claire's response came immediately. Deal. Thank you, Marcus. He set the phone down, closed the notebook, and felt something shift inside him. Not certainty exactly, but something close to hope. Morning came too early. Marcus's alarm went off at 5:30, same as always, and he lay there for a moment in the dark, feeling the weight of what he'd agreed to settle over him like a second skin. Part-time consultant, 20 hours a week, reviewing projects for a company that built the kind of structures he used to dream about designing. It sounded impossible when he said it in his head. He got up anyway. Made coffee, made Emma's lunch. The routine steadied him. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6:15, rubbing her eyes, her hair sticking up in 3 different directions. Morning, kiddo. She climbed into her chair and yawned. You're up early? I'm always up early. Earlier than early. She picked up her fork. You okay? 7 years old, and she could already read him better than most adults. I need to talk to you about something. Emma's eyes widened slightly. Are we moving? No, nothing like that. He took a breath. I got offered another job, part-time. I'd still work at the shop, but I'd also be helping a company make sure their buildings are safe. Like what you used to do before I was born. Yeah, kind of like that. Emma considered this while chewing. Would you be gone more? I don't know yet, maybe a little. But I'd still pick you up from school, still make dinner, still help with homework. And still read to me at night. Always. She nodded, satisfied. Okay then, you should do it. Just like that. Mrs. Patterson says we should do things that make us happy. Does it make you happy? Marcus thought about that. Happy felt like too big a word, but something close to it, something that felt like purpose. Yeah, I think it does. Then you should definitely do it. She grinned at him. Plus maybe you'll make more money and we can get a dog. Marcus laughed despite himself. We'll see about the dog. That's what you always say. Because it's true. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Marcus drove her to school, watched her disappear into the building with her backpack bouncing, then sat in the parking lot for a moment, gathering himself. He had to tell Frank next. That conversation would be harder. Frank was already at the shop when Marcus arrived, elbow deep in the engine compartment of a Ford pickup, a cigarette tucked behind his ear, even though he'd quit smoking 5 years ago. You're late. By 3 minutes. Still late. Frank straightened, wiping his hands on a rag that was somehow dirtier than his hands. You look like you got something on your mind. Marcus leaned against the workbench. I got offered a consulting job, part-time, development firm downtown. They want me to review projects, make sure they're not building on bad ground. Good money. Better than here. Frank raised an eyebrow. That was fast. They want me to do both. Keep working here, maybe adjust my hours. What are you asking me for? You're a grown man. Make your own decisions. I'm asking because you gave me this job when nobody else would. When I had a baby and a divorce and no references, I don't forget that. Frank studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled the cigarette from behind his ear, looked at it, put it back. You're too smart to be changing oil for the rest of your life, kid. I've known that since day one. This place kept me stable. Stable's good, but there's a difference between stable and stuck. Frank crossed his arms. You do what you need to do. We'll figure out the schedule. And if it doesn't work out, you still got a spot here. Just like that. Thanks, Frank. Don't thank me yet. You're still cleaning the bathroom this week. 3 days later, Marcus found himself back in the glass tower downtown, this time in a smaller conference room with Claire and 2 other people, a woman named Sandra, who handled acquisitions, and a guy named Marcus, who managed environmental compliance. We're starting you with something straightforward. Claire slid a folder across the table. Proposed retail center in Beaverton. Acquisition team says it's clean. We want you to verify. Marcus opened the folder. Site maps, soil reports, zoning documents, traffic studies, the familiar language of development, technical and precise. What's the timeline? Sandra shifted in her seat. 2 weeks. We need your assessment before we move forward with the purchase. That's tight. We know. But if there are problems, we need to know now, not after we've sunk money into it. Marcus flipped through the documents, his eyes catching on details, inconsistencies, small flags that most people would miss. I'll need access to city records, full environmental history, and I want to visit the site. Done, Claire said. Whatever you need. The compliance guy leaned forward. I've been doing this here for 3 years. If you have questions about process, I'm your guy. Appreciate it. They spent the next hour going over logistics, access protocols, reporting structures. Marcus took notes in the small notebook he'd brought, the same one he'd used to weigh his decision. By the time they finished, his head was swimming with information. Claire walked him to the elevator. You okay? Yeah, just a lot to absorb. You'll be fine. Better than fine. The elevator arrived. Marcus stepped inside, then turned back. Claire. Yeah. Thank you for doing this. I know it's not easy balancing 2 jobs and a kid. I'm still figuring out if it's possible. It is. I've seen you handle worse. The door slid shut before he could respond. That evening, Marcus spread the Beaverton project documents across his kitchen table. After Emma went to bed, he made fresh coffee, put on an old playlist of instrumental music, and started reading. The first pass took 2 hours. The site looked clean on the surface, flat land, good drainage, no obvious contamination flags. But something nagged at him, a reference in the traffic study to historical use that wasn't elaborated on. He pulled up the city's property records on his laptop and started digging. By midnight, he'd traced the site back 40 years. Agricultural land in the 80s, then sat vacant for a decade, then briefly housed a dry cleaning business in the late 90s. Dry cleaning. Marcus's pulse quickened. He knew what that meant: perchloroethylene contamination. PERC, a solvent used in dry cleaning that seeped into groundwater and stuck around for decades. He cross-referenced with the state's environmental database. Sure enough, the dry cleaner had been flagged for improper disposal in 1998. Cleanup had been initiated but never completed. The property changed hands twice, and somewhere along the way the contamination issue got buried in paperwork. Marcus sat back, rubbing his eyes. The current soil report in the acquisition folder made no mention of it. Either the testing hadn't gone deep enough or someone had cherry-picked clean samples. He made notes, pulled maps, highlighted sections of the report that didn't add up. By the time he finally went to bed, it was 2 a.m. His alarm would go off in 3.5 hours. But he'd found it another problem hiding in plain sight. Claire called him at 7:30 the next morning while he was driving Emma to school. I read your preliminary report. Are you sure about this? Completely. The site's contaminated. Not enough to be dangerous to people walking around, but enough to be a problem if you're digging foundations disturbing the soil. The acquisition team swears it's clean. Then they didn't look hard enough. Marcus pulled into the school parking lot. I can show you exactly where the contamination is and how it got there. But if you want to build there, you're looking at remediation costs that'll blow your budget. Claire was quiet for a moment. Okay. Send me everything. We're meeting with the sellers this afternoon. I need ammunition. You got it? Marcus. Yeah. This is exactly why we hired you. After dropping Emma off, Marcus drove to the Beaverton site himself. It was a flat, empty lot surrounded by chain-link fence weeds growing through cracks in the old asphalt. A faded sign advertised it as prime commercial space. Marcus walked the perimeter, taking photos, noting the slight depression in the northwest corner where the dry cleaner used to sit. You could still see the outline of the old foundation if you knew what to look for. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Marcus Wade. Yeah. My name is Stephen Morrison. Morrison and Webb Architecture. You worked for us about 7 years ago. Marcus's breath caught. I remember. I've been following the news, the Hearthlight situation. I have to say I'm impressed. You always had an eye for detail, but this was exceptional work. Thank you. I'm calling because we have a position opening up, Senior Project Manager. It would mean coming back full-time, but the pay is competitive and the work is exactly what you used to do. Marcus stood there in the empty lot, phone pressed to his ear, feeling the world tilt slightly. I appreciate the offer, but I can't. I've got a daughter. I need flexibility that a full-time position can't give me. We could work something out. Remote work, adjusted hours. I'm sorry, I really am, but the answer's no. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Well, if you change your mind, the door's open. You're one of the best researchers we ever had. The call ended. Marcus stood there staring at the contaminated ground beneath his feet and felt something settle in him. He'd made the right choice. Not the glamorous one, not the one that would look good on paper, but the right one. The meeting with the Beaverton sellers went exactly as Marcus predicted. Claire presented his findings, the sellers tried to deflect, and their own environmental consultant was forced to admit that yes, there were historical contamination issues that hadn't been fully disclosed. The deal fell apart in 45 minutes. Sandra was furious. That was 3 months of work down the drain. Better than $3 million in remediation costs. Claire's voice was calm but firm. Marcus saved us from a disaster. He's costing us deals. He's keeping us from making stupid mistakes, which is exactly what we hired him to do. Sandra left the room without another word. The compliance guy caught up with Marcus in the hallway afterward. Don't take it personally. She's under a lot of pressure to close deals. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make sure buildings don't fall down. The guy grinned. I like you, man. You don't pull punches. Over the next month, Marcus reviewed 4 more projects. He flagged 2 for serious issues, one for unstable soil, another for inadequate drainage that would flood basements within 5 years. The other 2 passed with minor recommendations. His reputation within the company grew. Some people appreciated his thoroughness. Claire Robert, the compliance guy. Others resented it. Sandra barely spoke to him anymore. But Robert Ashford made a point of shaking his hand at every board meeting. You're making us look smart and saving us a fortune. Keep it up. Marcus kept working both jobs 5 days a week at Frank's shop, evenings and weekends on consulting work. It was exhausting, but it was also the most engaged he'd felt in years. Emma noticed. You smile more now, like you're not just tired all the time. I'm still tired. But it's a different kind of tired. Good tired. Yeah, good tired. 6 weeks into his new role, Marcus got a text from a number he'd deleted but still recognized. Derek. We need to talk, in person. Marcus stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Why? Because I owe you an apology. A real one. You already apologized. Not the way I should have. Meet me for coffee. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. Against his better judgment, Marcus agreed. They met at a small cafe near the waterfront. Neutral territory. Derek was already there when Marcus arrived, sitting at a corner table looking thinner and older than he had 2 months ago. Thanks for coming. You've got 1 hour. Derek nodded. I've been in therapy. Court-ordered, actually, as part of my leave agreement. My therapist made me write down everything I did wrong with Hearthlight. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. It's a long list. Marcus said nothing. Derek went through it, rushed the acquisition, ignored environmental reports, mocked. Marcus tried to destroy his reputation when called out. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better. Because I spent 10 years building a career on being the smartest guy in the room, and it turned out I was just the loudest. Derek looked up and his eyes were red-rimmed. And when you called me out, I tried to destroy your reputation because I couldn't handle being wrong. He unfolded the paper. This is everything I should have checked before buying that land. Every single thing. You knew all of it off the top of your head. I had to Google it. Marcus took the paper. It was covered in Derek's handwriting, soil types, contamination markers, floodplain designations, zoning restrictions. I don't want your job. I'm not asking for that. I just wanted you to know that you were right about all of it. And I'm sorry I made you the villain when I was the one who screwed up. What are you going to do now? I don't know. The board hasn't made a final decision, but even if they let me come back, I don't think I should. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to prove something." They sat in silence for a moment. "For what it's worth," Marcus said, "I hope you figure it out." Derek looked surprised. "Really?" "Yeah, because being an asshole isn't a permanent condition, it's just a choice you kept making." Derek laughed, short, bitter, but genuine. "My therapist said almost the exact same thing." They talked for another 20 minutes. Not as friends, but not as enemies either. Just two people who'd collided in the worst possible way and were trying to make sense of the aftermath. When they finally parted ways, Derek shook Marcus's hand. "You're good at this work. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Marcus watched him walk away, shoulders hunched against the wind, and felt something close to sympathy. That night Marcus sat at Ember and Oak for the first time in weeks. The place felt different now. Or maybe he felt different. People recognized him. A few nodded. One woman raised her glass in acknowledgement. The bartender grinned when she saw him. "Well, well, the man of the hour. Don't start." "Too late. You're a legend here." She poured him his usual beer on the house. "You don't have to do that." "I want to. You made those suits look like idiots. That's worth a free beer." Claire slid onto the stool beside him a few minutes later, still in her work clothes, looking exhausted but satisfied. "Rough day." "Long day. Good day." She ordered wine. "The board approved 3 new projects. All of them passed your review." "That's what I'm here for." "It's more than that." Claire turned to face him. "You're changing how we do business. People are actually reading environmental reports now. Sandra's team is doing better research before acquisitions. You've made us better." "I just do my job." "Stop being so humble. It's annoying." She smiled. "You know what Robert said today? He said hiring you was the smartest decision we've made in 5 years. They sat there drinking, watching the bar fill up with the usual Thursday night crowd. At some point someone played an old jazz song on the jukebox and the whole place seemed to exhale. "Can I ask you something?" Claire's voice was softer now. "Sure." "Do you ever regret it? Walking away from architecture the first time?" Marcus thought about that. "I used to, but I don't think I could have been the kind of father Emma needed if I'd stayed. Architecture demands everything. I didn't have everything to give." He paused. "And now I get to do both. Not perfectly, but enough." Claire nodded slowly. "I envy that. The clarity." "You have clarity. You just don't trust it yet." She looked at him surprised. "That might be the most insightful thing anyone's said to me in months." "I'm full of surprises." "Yeah," Claire said quietly. "You really are." They stayed until closing, talking about everything and nothing. And when Marcus finally drove home through empty streets, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, not peace, but something close to both. Something like belonging. The belonging didn't last long. 2 weeks later, Marcus was under the hood of a Honda Accord at Frank's shop when his phone rang. Claire's name flashed on the screen. He wiped his hands and answered. "We have a problem." Her voice was tight, controlled fear underneath. "Can you come downtown?" "Now." "What kind of problem?" "The kind I can't discuss over the phone." Marcus glanced at Frank, who was watching from across the garage. "I'm in the middle of—" "Marcus, please. It's important." He heard something in her voice he'd never heard before, actual fear, not the professional kind. "Give me 40 minutes. Frank didn't ask questions when Marcus explained he had to leave, just nodded and took over the Honda. "Go do what you got to do." The drive downtown felt longer than usual. Traffic crawled. Rain started halfway there, turning the streets slick and gray. By the time Marcus reached the glass tower, his shirt was damp and his mind was racing through possibilities, none of them good. Claire met him in the lobby herself, which was unusual. She looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail instead of her usual sleek style. "What's going on?" "Conference room. My father's waiting." They rode the elevator in silence. The tension rolled off Claire in waves. The conference room held more people than Marcus expected. Robert sat at the head of the table, his usual composure cracked around the edges. Sandra was there, arms crossed, expression stormy. The compliance guy looked nervous. And two people Marcus didn't recognize, a woman in an expensive suit with a leather briefcase and a man in his 50s who had the tired, watchful look of someone who'd seen too many corporate disasters. "Mr. Wade, thank you for coming on short notice." Robert's voice was measured but strained. "This is Patricia Lowry, our corporate attorney, and Detective James Brennan from the Portland Police Bureau." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Police?" "Please sit." Patricia's voice was crisp, professional, revealing nothing. Marcus sat beside Claire. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Brennan leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. "Mr. Wade, I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with Derek Brennan." "I don't have a relationship with Derek Brennan." "You met with him 2 weeks ago at a cafe downtown." "He asked to apologize. I listened. That's it." Brennan pulled out a tablet and turned it to face Marcus. On the screen was a series of emails. Marcus's name appeared in several of them. "These were recovered from Mr. Brennan's personal email account. They suggest that you and he had been communicating for several months prior to the Hearthlight incident, that you provided him with inside information about Ashford and Brennan's acquisition targets." Marcus stared at the screen. "That's not true. I never—" Sandra cut in, her voice sharp. "The emails are dated, going back 6 months before you even started working here." "I didn't write those emails." "They came from an account registered to your name," Brennan said. "An encrypted email service. The messages reference specific projects, internal discussions, acquisition strategies, information only someone inside the company would know." Marcus felt the room closing in. "I don't have an encrypted email account. I barely use regular email." "This is— someone set this up." "That's what we're trying to determine," Patricia said. "But you can see how this looks." Claire finally spoke, her voice tight. "Marcus, I need you to be completely honest right now. Did you have any contact with Derek before the night at the bar?" "No, I swear I didn't." "Did you give him information about our projects?" "No." "Did you create an encrypted email account for any reason?" "No." Marcus looked around the table. "I don't understand what's happening. Why would I sabotage the company that's paying me—" "Revenge," Sandra said flatly. "Derek humiliated you. You wanted to destroy his career, so you fed him bad information, waited for him to fail, then swooped in as the hero. That sounds like a long con to me." "That's insane." "Is it? You show up out of nowhere. You expose a massive flaw in our biggest project. You get hired immediately. And now we find evidence that you've been working with Derek all along. I exposed Hearthlight because it was dangerous. I didn't plan it. I didn't want any of this." "Then explain the emails," Brennan said calmly. "I can't, because I didn't write them." The detective studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Wade, I'm not charging you with anything right now, but I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. If these allegations are true, we're looking at corporate espionage, fraud, possibly conspiracy. Those are felonies." Marcus's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the table. "I need to see those emails. All of them." Brennan slid the tablet across. Marcus scrolled through the messages. They were detailed, technical, discussing projects he'd reviewed, meetings he'd attended, decisions the board had made. The language was formal but conversational, exactly the way someone might write if they were trying to sound like him. But the dates were wrong. The first email was sent in May, 4 months before he'd even met Claire. "Look at the dates. I didn't start consulting here until September. How could I have inside information in May?" "Derek claims you approached him months earlier," Sandra said. "That you offered to help him outmaneuver Claire in exchange for a cut of his deals." "That's a lie." "Can you prove it?" Marcus's mind raced. "Check my phone records, credit card statements. I can show you I was never anywhere near Derek before that night at the bar." Patricia made a note. We'll need access to those records. You can have them, all of them. Marcus turned to Claire. You know me. You know I wouldn't do this. Claire's expression was anguished. I want to believe you, Marcus. I do. But I can't ignore evidence. It's not evidence. It's fabrication. Then who fabricated it? And why? Brennan stood. Mr. Wade, I'm going to need you to come to the station to make a formal statement. You're not under arrest, but this is a serious investigation. I need a lawyer. That's your right. We can arrange that. Patricia handed him a business card. I can recommend someone, but understand that if you're charged, you'll need your own representation. I represent the company. Marcus took the card with numb fingers. Claire walked him to the elevator. In the hallway away from the others, she finally looked at him directly. Tell me the truth, please. Just you and me. I am telling the truth. I didn't do this. Then who did? I don't know, but someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look like I did. The elevator arrived. I'm suspending your consulting contract, effective immediately, until this is resolved. I understand. I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. The doors closed on her stricken face. Marcus sat in his truck in the parking garage for 20 minutes trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed with a text from Frank. Everything okay? But he couldn't even begin to answer that. Another text came through, this one from Helen Wright. Picking Emma up from school today. Take your time. He'd forgotten to tell her he might be late. He'd forgotten everything except the look on Claire's face when she'd suspended him. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Wade, this is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a criminal defense attorney. Patricia Lowry contacted me on your behalf. We need to meet as soon as possible. I can't afford. First consultation's free. After that, we'll figure something out. Can you be at my office in an hour? Marcus checked the time. Yeah, I can do that. Jennifer Walsh's office was in an older building downtown, modest but professional. Walsh turned out to be a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She listened to his story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When he finished, she set down her pen. This is a setup. I know. No, I mean a sophisticated one. Someone with technical knowledge and access to your personal information. They didn't just forge emails, they created an entire digital trail designed to look like you. Can we prove that? Maybe. We'll need a forensic tech expert to analyze the account, trace IP addresses, examine metadata. She named a figure that made Marcus's vision blur. I don't have that kind of money. Then we build the case the old-fashioned way. Phone records, witnesses, timeline verification. It'll take longer, but it's doable. She leaned forward. Marcus, I'm going to be straight with you. This looks bad. Someone smart wanted to destroy you, and they did their homework. But the dates are your strongest defense. If you can prove you had no connection to Ashford and Brennan before September, that creates reasonable doubt. What about Derek? He's the one making these accusations. He's also the one who stands to benefit from your downfall. The police will investigate him too. But right now, you're the target. Marcus rubbed his face. What do I do? You cooperate fully. Give them everything they ask for. Be completely transparent. And you trust me to fight for you. Why should I trust you? Jennifer smiled slightly. Because I've been doing this for 20 years and I can spot a frame job from a mile away. Someone's trying to destroy you, and I don't like bullies. The police interview lasted 3 hours. Marcus answered every question, provided access to his phone, his laptop, his bank accounts. Detective Brennan was professional but skeptical, pushing hard on the timeline, the emails, Marcus's sudden appearance in Derek's world. It's convenient. You're a struggling mechanic barely making ends meet. You hear about a development company making deals, you see an opportunity. I didn't hear about anything. I went to a bar. Derek mocked me. I went back because I liked talking to Claire. That's it. And the Hearthlight information. How did you know about the contamination? I researched it years ago. It stuck with me. Years ago. Yes. Brennan made a note. We'll be verifying that. When it was finally over, Jennifer drove Marcus back to his truck. It was dark by then, rain coming down harder. Go home. Be with your daughter. Don't talk to the press. Don't talk to anyone from Ashford and Brennan, and definitely don't talk to Derek Brennan. What if he contacts me? You refer him to me immediately. Marcus drove home through the rain, his mind blank, his body operating on autopilot. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Helen met him at the door. Emma's asleep. I told her you had to work late. Thank you. She studied his face. Whatever's happening, you'll get through it. You're stronger than you think. After Helen left, Marcus stood in the kitchen staring at the table where he'd made the decision to take the consulting job. It felt like a lifetime ago. His phone buzzed, unknown number text message. You should have stayed in your lane, mechanic. Marcus stared at the message, his pulse pounding. He forwarded it to Jennifer and blocked the number. He checked on Emma, still asleep, one arm around her rabbit, then retreated to his own room. He lay in bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand who hated him enough to do this. The answer came just before dawn when exhaustion finally pulled him under. Derek. It had to be Derek. The next morning, Marcus called in sick to the shop for the first time in 3 years. Frank didn't ask questions, just told him to take care of himself. Marcus dropped Emma at school, then drove to Jennifer's office. I think Derek set me up. Jennifer was already at her desk, surrounded by files. Why? Because I ruined his career. He apologized, but what if that was just to get close to me, to make it look like we had a relationship? The emails predate your coffee meeting. So he planned it earlier. Set up the account, wrote the messages, waited for the right moment to deploy them. To destroy you. To make sure I can't work in this field again. He said it himself, I took everything he built. Jennifer considered this. That's motive for harassment, maybe defamation, but creating an elaborate email trail that could expose him to criminal charges, that's a big risk. Unless he's desperate enough not to care. She made a note. I'll have our investigator look into Derek's digital footprint, see if there's any connection to the encrypted account. But Marcus, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this isn't Derek, that it's someone else entirely. Who else would want to destroy me? I don't know yet, but we'll find out. Over the next week, Marcus's life unraveled in slow motion. The story hit the local news, not front page, but prominent enough. Consultant accused of corporate espionage. His name, his face, his connection to Hearthlight all laid out for public consumption. Parents at Emma's school started whispering. Some pulled their kids away when he showed up for pickup. Mrs. Patterson, Emma's teacher, called him in for a conference. I just want to make sure Emma's okay. She's been quieter lately, less engaged. She knows something's wrong. I've tried to shield her, but kids are perceptive. They are. Mrs. Patterson hesitated. For what it's worth, I don't believe what they're saying about you. I've seen how you are with Emma. That's not a man who lies. It was the first kind thing anyone outside his immediate circle had said in days. At the shop, Frank kept him busy with work, asked no questions, and ran interference when customers brought up the news. Jake stopped by one afternoon with coffee and a sympathetic shoulder. People suck sometimes, but this'll blow over. Truth always comes out. Marcus wanted to believe that. Thursday morning, Jennifer called, her voice tight with controlled excitement. We found something. The encrypted email account was created from an IP address that traces back to a coffee shop in southeast Portland. We pulled security footage from that date. She paused. You're never going to guess who was there. Derek. No. Patricia Sullivan. Marcus's world tilted. Patricia, from acquisitions. She was at that coffee shop for 3 hours the day the account was created, sitting at a corner table with a laptop. Why would Patricia frame me? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. The answer came 2 days later, delivered by Detective Brennan himself. He showed up at the shop just after lunch, his expression grim. We need to talk, privately. They went to Frank's office, a cramped space with oil-stained walls and a desk buried under invoices. Patricia Sullivan has been arrested. She confessed to creating the fake email account and framing you for corporate espionage. Marcus's legs went weak. Why? Because you cost her 3 major deals. Every project you flagged became a deal she couldn't close. Her performance reviews were tanking. Her bonus was cut. She blamed you for destroying her career. So she decided to destroy mine. Essentially, yes. She created the account, wrote the emails using information she had access to, timed it to coincide with Derek's fall. She knew you'd be the obvious suspect, the outsider, the mechanic who showed up out of nowhere. Derek had nothing to do with it. No. He was as shocked as anyone when we showed him the emails. He thought they were real. Marcus sat down heavily. So I've spent 2 weeks thinking he was the enemy. And it was Patricia the whole time. She's facing multiple charges: corporate fraud, identity theft, obstruction of justice. She's looking at serious prison time. Brennan handed him a document. This is a formal letter clearing you of all accusations. The investigation is closed. You're free. Marcus stared at the letter, the words blurring together. I'm sorry this happened to you. For what it's worth, I'm glad we got it right in the end. After Brennan left, Marcus sat in Frank's office for a long time holding the letter, feeling nothing. Frank appeared in the doorway. You okay, kid? I don't know. I should be relieved, but I just feel empty. That's normal. You've been fighting for 2 weeks. Takes time for the adrenaline to wear off. She almost destroyed everything. My reputation, my job, my ability to provide for Emma. All because I was good at my job. Some people can't handle other people being better than them. But you won. Don't forget that. Marcus looked up. Did I? Because it doesn't feel like winning. Give it time. It will. Claire called that evening, her voice thick with emotion. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you, should have fought harder for you. You were protecting your company. I understand. No, I was scared. And I let that fear make me doubt you when I should have trusted my gut. She took a shaky breath. The board wants to reinstate you immediately. Full back pay for the suspension. And they want to offer you a permanent position, not part-time. Full senior consultant with benefits, profit sharing the works. Marcus stood at his kitchen window watching rain streak down the glass. I need to think about it. Of course. Take all the time you need. A pause. Marcus. Yeah. You changed everything here. The culture, the standards, the way we think about development. That doesn't go away just because Patricia tried to burn it down. After they hung up, Marcus made dinner for Emma spaghetti with garlic bread, her favorite. They ate together at the kitchen table, and she told him about the book report she was writing, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. Mrs. Patterson says I'm really good at writing. She said I should enter a contest. You should. You're great at it. Are you feeling better, Dad? He looked at her, this fierce, perceptive little person he'd somehow raised. Yeah, kiddo. I'm feeling a lot better. Good. Because you were sad for a while and I didn't like it. I'm sorry about that. It's okay. Everyone gets sad sometimes. That's what Mrs. Wright says. After Emma went to bed, Marcus sat on the porch with a beer listening to the rain, thinking about Claire's offer. Full-time meant security benefits, the ability to really make a difference in how Portland grew. But it also meant giving up the shop, giving up the simplicity of fixing engines, the satisfaction of problems that had clear solutions. His phone rang. Derek. Marcus almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I heard what happened. Had to call to say I'm sorry. Again. For real this time. You didn't do anything. I created the environment where Patricia thought this was acceptable. I made competition toxic. I made people think their worth was tied to deals closed instead of quality work. Derek's voice was raw. I'm the reason she felt desperate enough to destroy you. That's on me. That's on her, not you. Maybe. But I'm done pretending I don't have responsibility for the culture I built. A pause. For what it's worth, you deserved none of this. And if you take that job Claire's offering, you'll do better with it than I ever did. I haven't decided yet. Then let me help you decide. Take it. Change the company. Make it what it should have been all along. Because if anyone can do that, it's you. The call ended. Marcus sat there until the beer was warm and the rain had stopped. Then he went inside, pulled out his notebook, and started writing. Not a list this time, a plan. The plan took shape over 3 days of careful thought and late-night revisions. Marcus filled pages with ideas crossed out, half of them refined the rest. By Sunday evening he had something concrete, something worth fighting for. Monday morning he called Claire. I want to accept the position, but I have conditions. I'm listening. I don't want to just review projects. I want to create a new division, something that brings real-world expertise into development before mistakes happen. We hire people who've actually built things, contractors, engineers, city workers, people who understand ground-level reality. We make them part of the decision-making process from day one. Claire was quiet for a moment. That's ambitious. It's necessary. Patricia wasn't wrong that I cost the company deals. I did. But those were bad deals that would have cost you more in the long run. If we build this right, we don't just avoid disasters, we create better projects, smarter growth. What would you call this division? Marcus looked at the notebook where he'd written the name a dozen times, testing how it felt. Foundations. Because you can't build anything lasting if you ignore what's underneath. I love it. Bring me a full proposal. I'll take it to the board. There's one more thing. What? I'm keeping my job at Frank's shop, 2 days a week. Non-negotiable. Why? Because I need to remember where I came from, and because fixing engines keeps me grounded in a way office work never will. Claire laughed softly. You know, most people would kill for a full-time senior position with profit sharing, right? I'm not most people. No, you're really not, and that's exactly why this will work. The board meeting was set for Thursday. Marcus spent 3 nights preparing his proposal, working at the kitchen table after Emma went to bed, refining every detail. He outlined the division structure, hiring criteria, integration with existing departments, projected costs, and potential savings. He included case studies of projects they'd avoided and projects they could have improved with better front-end analysis. Emma watched him work one evening, sitting cross-legged on the couch with her book report. You look serious. I'm preparing something important. For your new job? Maybe, if they say yes. She considered this, chewing on her pencil. What happens if they say no? Then I keep doing what I'm doing. It wouldn't be the end of the world. But you want them to say yes? Yeah, I do. Then they will, because you're really good at this stuff. She said it with the absolute certainty of a 7-year-old who believed her father could do anything. How do you know I'm good at it? Because Mrs. Wright said so. She read the newspaper article about you. She said you're a hero. I'm not a hero, kiddo. That's what heroes always say. She went back to her book report, the matter settled in her mind. Thursday arrived cold and clear, the kind of November morning where Portland's gray skies briefly gave way to sharp blue. Marcus wore his one good suit, the same one he'd worn to his mother's funeral 5 years ago. It still fit barely. Frank saw him heading out early and raised an eyebrow. Big day. Board presentation. Don't need luck when you've got the truth on your side. Frank handed him a thermos of coffee. But take this anyway. Their coffee probably tastes like corporate ambition. The glass tower gleamed in the morning light. Marcus rode the elevator up, his proposal tucked under one arm, his father's watch on his wrist for luck. Claire met him outside the conference room. Ready, as I'll ever be. Robert's already sold on it, so am I. You just need to convince the other 5 board members that this isn't just damage control, that it's the future. No pressure. You've got this. Just be yourself. That's what got you here. The conference room was full, all 6 board members, plus the compliance guy, plus 2 people from finance. Everyone had copies of his proposal in front of them. Robert gestured to the empty chair at the head of the table. Mr. Wade, thank you for coming. We've reviewed your proposal. I have to say it's impressive. Thank you. Peterson, the gray-haired skeptic, leaned forward. But impressive on paper and viable in practice are two different things. You're proposing we hire a team of essentially blue-collar consultants to second-guess our professional acquisition staff. That's expensive and potentially insulting to people who've been doing this work for years. With respect, Mr. Peterson, I'm not proposing we second-guess anyone. I'm proposing we add expertise we currently lack. Your acquisition team is excellent at financial analysis, market research, legal due diligence, but they're not trained to spot soil contamination, structural red flags, or long-term environmental risks. That's not their fault. It's just not their specialty. We have engineers for that. You bring in engineers after you've already committed to a deal. I'm talking about bringing in ground-level expertise before you make the commitment, before you spend money on something that might be fundamentally flawed. Torres, one of the other board members, leaned forward. Give us an example, a real one. Marcus opened his folder. 6 months ago, you looked at a warehouse conversion project in Northwest Portland. Beautiful building, great location, solid financials. You passed on it because the asking price was too high. David Sandra's replacement nodded. I remember that deal. The owners wouldn't budge on price. Did anyone walk the building, actually go inside and look at the infrastructure? David hesitated. We had photos, virtual tours. The building has a flat roof with inadequate drainage. Portland gets 40 inches of rain a year. Within 3 years, that roof would need complete replacement at a cost of roughly $300,000. The electrical system is outdated, probably knob and tube wiring in sections, which means insurance costs would be astronomical. And the foundation shows early signs of settling on the north side. Marcus slid photos across the table, his own taken during a visit he'd made on his own time. These problems aren't visible in virtual tours, but they're real, and they would have eaten your profit margin alive. The room was silent. So you're saying we were right to pass? No. I'm saying with the right expertise you could have negotiated a fair price that accounted for these issues. The building's still beautiful, the location's still great, but the owners didn't know about these problems either. Knowledge is power in negotiation. Peterson frowned. How did you know to look at that building? We passed on it months before you started working here. I read the business journal. I research properties. It's what I do. Marcus met his eyes. And that's what the Foundation's team would do: constant research, constant analysis, catching problems before they become expensive disasters. They spent the next 40 minutes going through logistics, hiring budget integration metrics for success. Marcus showed them projections of money saved, deals, improved, risks avoided. He talked about how Portland was growing and how growth done wrong created problems that lasted generations. Development isn't just about profit. It's about responsibility to the people who live in these buildings, work in these spaces, raise families in these neighborhoods. If we build it wrong, they're the ones who pay the price, not us. When he finished, Robert looked around the table. Questions? No one spoke. Then I'll call for a vote. All in favor of creating the Foundation's division with Marcus Wade as senior director. 6 hands went up, unanimous. Robert extended his hand across the table. Welcome aboard, Mr. Wade. Let's build something worth building. Marcus called Frank from the parking garage, his hand still shaking slightly. They said yes, full approval. Budget, staff, everything. Of course they did, I told you. I need to talk to you about hours. I want to keep working at the shop, but I need to cut back to 2 days a week. Already figured that out. You take Mondays and Fridays. Gives me coverage on our slowest days. Gives you a full week in the middle for your corporate stuff. Just like that. Just like that. Frank's voice softened. I'm proud of you, kid. Your old man would be too. Marcus had to swallow hard before he could respond. Thanks, Frank. That means a lot. He picked Emma up from school himself that afternoon. When she saw him waiting outside, her face lit up. She ran over and threw her arms around his waist. You're here. I'm here. And I have news. They went for ice cream even though it was 40 degrees outside. Emma got chocolate chip with rainbow sprinkles. Marcus got coffee. They sat at a sticky table by the window, and he told her about the board meeting, the new division, what it would mean. "So you're going to make sure buildings don't fall down?" "Basically, yeah. That's important. Buildings falling down would be bad. Very bad." She took a huge bite of ice cream, got sprinkles on her nose, and grinned at him. "I'm glad they said yes. You're happy when you do this work." Marcus marveled at her sometimes. 7 years old, and she understood things that had taken him decades to figure out. "You're pretty smart, you know that." "I know. I get it from you." 6 months later, Foundations had grown to 12 full-time staff and was consulting on projects across the Pacific Northwest. Marcus had hired carefully people with real experience and the humility to admit what they didn't know. Maria, a former city inspector who'd spent 20 years reviewing building permits. James, a structural engineer who'd worked construction before getting his degree. Keisha, who specialized in environmental remediation and had a gift for spotting contamination others missed. They set up shop in a corner of the 10th floor, half a dozen desks, walls covered in maps and soil charts and project timelines. It wasn't fancy, but it was functional. Word spread. Other developers started calling, asking if Foundations could review their projects. Marcus had to turn most of them down. They were still building capacity, but the demand was real. One afternoon, Claire stopped by his office. "You're creating an industry. This isn't just a division anymore. It's becoming a standard." "That was the idea." "I know, but seeing it actually happen is different. You've changed how we think about development, not just here across the city." The Portland Tribune ran a feature story, "The Foundation Man, How One Mechanic is Revolutionizing Urban Development." Marcus hated the headline, too dramatic, too focused on him instead of the team. But the article itself was fair, detailing the division's work, the projects they'd improved, the disasters they'd prevented. It included a quote from Robert. "Marcus Wade taught us that expertise doesn't always come with fancy degrees. Sometimes it comes from someone who's actually built things with their hands." And from Derek, who was working as an independent consultant, now focusing on ethical development practices, "I spent years thinking I was the smartest person in every room. Marcus showed me that intelligence without integrity is just noise." The article ended with Marcus at the shop changing oil on a Honda, explaining why he still worked there 2 days a week. "This keeps me honest. Development can become abstract if you're not careful. Numbers on spreadsheets, projections, PowerPoint. Working here reminds me that buildings aren't theoretical. They're where people live, work, raise families. If we build them wrong, real people suffer. That's not abstract." Emma cut out the article and taped it to the refrigerator. "For when you forget, you're kind of famous." "I'm not famous." "The newspaper says you are." "The newspaper exaggerates." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever you say, Dad." 2 weeks later, the City Council announced a new initiative, mandatory third-party review for all development projects over $5 million. The review would focus on environmental impact, structural integrity, and long-term sustainability. They called it the Foundation Protocol. Marcus got the call from Robert while he was at the shop, elbow deep in a brake job. "Did you see the news?" "I've been working." "What news?" "The city adopted your model. Every major development in Portland will now go through the kind of review we created. You just changed city policy." Marcus sat down on a rolling stool, greasy rag in hand, stunned. "That's not possible." "It's very possible. The city planner cited Hearthlight specifically, said it was a wake-up call." Robert's voice was warm with pride. "Marcus, you didn't just change our company. You changed how this entire city approaches growth." That evening, Marcus took Emma to the park. They sat on the swings, pumping their legs in rhythm, competing to see who could go higher. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. He dragged his feet, slowing his swing, and looked at her. "Yeah, kiddo, I am." "Why do you ask?" "Because you smile more, and you don't look tired all the time, and Mrs. Wright says you've been whistling when you make coffee." "I do not whistle." "You totally do. It's kind of annoying, actually." Marcus laughed. "Sorry about that." "It's okay. I like it when you're happy." She slowed her own swing. "I think Mom would like it too." It was the first time Emma had mentioned her mother in months. Marcus chose his words carefully. "You think so?" "Yeah. She used to say you were wasting your talents, that you could do big things if you weren't so scared." She looked at him seriously. "But you're not scared anymore. You're doing the big things. I'm still scared sometimes. Being scared is normal, but you do it anyway. That's what Mrs. Patterson says. Bravery is being scared and doing it anyway." They swung in comfortable silence for a while, the autumn sun slanting through the trees, casting everything in gold. Thursday evening, Marcus sat alone at Ember and Oak, one beer in front of him, watching the room. The corner booth where everything had started was occupied by a different group, now young tech workers laughing too loud, oblivious to history. The bartender caught his eye and smiled. "They have no idea." "That's okay. They don't need to. You ever think about what would have happened if you just stayed quiet that night? Let Derek go ahead with his bad deal?" Marcus had thought about it many times. Buildings would have been built on unstable ground. People would have been put at risk. The company would have lost money, reputation, maybe everything. He took a sip of his beer. "But more than that, I would have lost something. My own integrity. And once you lose that, I'm not sure you can get it back." The bartender nodded. "That's what I figured you'd say." His phone buzzed. A text from Emma, who was at a sleepover at Helen's. "Don't forget we're planting the garden tomorrow. You promised." He smiled and texted back, "I remember. See you in the morning." Immediately, "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, kiddo." Marcus finished his beer, left cash on the bar, and walked out into the Portland night. The rain had started again, soft and steady, washing the streets clean. He turned up his collar and headed toward his truck. Behind him, Ember and Oak glowed warm in the darkness, full of voices and laughter and people who didn't know they were sitting in the place where a quiet mechanic had once decided that silence wasn't the same as safety. He drove home through familiar streets, past buildings he'd helped make safer, through neighborhoods growing smarter because someone had asked uncomfortable questions. The city looked the same as it always had, brick and glass, rain and light, endless possibility. But underneath, where it mattered most, the foundation was stronger. He pulled into his driveway, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in the quiet. The porch light was on Helen's kindness. The house waited solid and safe. Tomorrow he'd plant a garden with his daughter. Monday he'd rebuild an engine. Tuesday he'd review a development proposal that could change a neighborhood. None of it was glamorous. All of it was necessary. Marcus got out of the truck, locked it, and walked toward home. Behind him, Portland stretched out in the rain, growing and changing, building itself one decision at a time. And somewhere in the foundation of it all, invisible but essential, was the truth that one person speaking up could change everything. Not because they were special, not because they were fearless, but because they understood something fundamental: you can't build anything lasting if you ignore what's underneath. The door closed behind him. The light stayed on.